Deep in the misty countryside of West Dunbartonshire, Scotland, there's this beautiful old bridge from the 19th century. But don't let the scenery fool you. This place, a marvel of Victorian design, is hiding a really dark and frankly baffling secret. It's a place where, for more than 70 years, hundreds of dogs have been, well, they've been compelled to leap to their deaths. So let's dive into the chilling mystery of Overtoun Bridge.
That's Alice Trevorrow. She's talking about the moment her beloved spaniel, Cassie, just suddenly froze, stared at something nobody else could see, and then just bolted, jumping straight over the side of the bridge. Miraculously, Cassie survived, but her story is just one of many that make this whole thing so terrifyingly real for hundreds of pet owners.
And we're not talking about a couple of strange incidents here. Oh no. Since the 1950s, it's estimated that more than 600 dogs have taken that same horrifying leap from Overtoun Bridge. Some actually survive the 15-meter drop onto the rocks below, but here's where it gets even weirder. Some of those survivors have reportedly climbed all the way back up and tried to jump a second time.
You know, the bridge was built back in 1895, just to provide a nice, grand entrance to the Overtoun House estate. It was never meant for this kind of dark reputation, but over the years, it's earned itself a pretty haunting nickname, the Dog Suicide Bridge. So the big question is, what is going on here? And really, the explanations fall into two very, very different camps. Okay, first, let's wade into the stories that you hear whispered in the shadows of local folklore. For a lot of people, the answer to this mystery isn't something you can see or touch. It's something you feel, a chilling presence that they say has haunted this land for centuries.
I mean, that's the question, right? It's puzzled locals for generations, and it's led to some legends that are just as compelling as they are creepy.
One of the oldest ideas is actually rooted in Celtic mythology. Overtoun is said to be what's called a thin place. Basically, a spiritual crossover point where the veil between our world and the next is practically non-existent. In a place like that, spirits can supposedly influence the living world, and animals, well, with their heightened senses, they might be especially vulnerable.
So the paranormal theories are kind of split between sorrow and just sheer horror. On one side, you have the tragic story of the White Lady, the ghost of a grieving widow, Lady Overtoun, whose sorrow is said to echo through the estate. But on the other side, there's a much darker story, a horrific human tragedy from 1994 that some locals believe has cursed the exact spot where the dogs jump.
But as these stories grew, so did the need for a more, well, a rational explanation. In recent years, scientists and animal behaviorists have turned their focus to the bridge, determined to find a logical reason for this bizarre and deadly pattern. And this is really the crucial question that takes us from folklore to forensics. Researchers started asking, could there be a physical, measurable cause? You know, something in the sight, sound, or even the smell of the place that's driving these animals to act so strangely.
The timeline itself actually gives us a massive clue. Look, the bridge stood there for over 50 years, with no strange reports at all. Then, bam, in the 1950s, the incidents began. This suggested to investigators that something in the local environment must have changed around that time, a puzzle that a guy named Dr. David Sands would later try to solve in 2010.
So a few early theories were thrown around. Some folks thought a high-frequency sound from a nearby naval base might be messing with the dogs, but acoustic experts checked it out and found nothing. Others wondered if the dogs were sensing dark thoughts in their owners, but there was zero evidence for that. The idea of some kind of visual illusion, though, that one started to stick.
Eventually, the investigation narrowed down to one primary suspect, an invisible force that is incredibly powerful to a dog, the power of scent. And this theory, well, it would become the most compelling scientific explanation to date.
Dr. Sand's big idea was to try and experience the bridge from a dog's point of view. He thought about their sights, their hearing, but most importantly, he thought about their sense of smell, which is, thousands of times more sensitive than ours. He started to suspect the trigger wasn't something to see or hear, it was something to smell. His experiment was actually brilliant in its simplicity. First, he figured out what kind of scent-marking animals were living down in the ravine below the bridge. He found mice, squirrels, and, crucially, mink. Then he took the isolated scents from these three animals and presented them to a group of dogs. Many of them were the same long-nosed breeds that had jumped. And the results? They were absolutely staggering.
A full 70% of the dogs made a beeline straight for the mink scent, totally ignoring the others. That potent, musky smell was just overwhelmingly attractive to them. This was the strongest lead anyone had ever found.
So, this all comes together to form the leading scientific theory. Picture this. A powerful mink scent wafts up from the ravine, especially on dry days. A dog picks up this irresistible smell. At the exact same time, the bridge's solid granite walls are high and they taper upwards, completely blocking the dog's view of the huge drop and creating an illusion of solid ground on the other side. The dog leaps over, expecting to land in some bushes, but instead it falls 15 meters. But even with this really compelling scientific theory, the story isn't over, not by a long shot. The enigma of Overtoun Bridge is not so easily put to rest, and there are still some major questions that have no answers, leaving the door wide open for doubt and for speculation.
See, the scent theory doesn't explain everything. If it's just the mink, why do the jumps almost always happen from the same side of the bridge? Why this bridge specifically, when mink live all over Scotland? And maybe the most disturbing question of all, what could possibly compel an animal that survived that awful fall to climb all the way back up and try to do it again? Science doesn't really have a good answer for that yet.
So this is where we're left with two competing stories. You've got the paranormal view, supported by local legends and people who swear they feel something strange there, and that seems to explain the eerie consistency. Then you have the scientific view, based on actual experiments, which explains the biological trigger. Each one has its strengths, and each one has its holes.
And while the debate between science and superstition rages on, a very practical solution has been put in place. This simple sign now stands at the entrance to the bridge. It's a stark reminder that no matter what the cause is, the danger there is very, very real.
In the end, Overtoun Bridge remains a total enigma. Is it a haunted, thin place that's luring these poor animals to their death? Or is it just a perfect storm of animal instinct and deceptive architecture? For now, the misty Scottish bridge, it isn't telling. So what do you think is really going on?